The alert arrived during the middle of a celebration. High Commander Elias Vane stood beneath the golden lights of the Imperial Senate Hall, while musicians played softly in the background and politicians laughed over expensive wine imported from the southern colonies. The war against the frontier rebels had officially ended 3 days earlier. For the first time in nearly a year, the capital world of Ethros was relaxed. That was why the alert felt wrong the moment his wrist communicator vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times in less than 15 seconds. Elias frowned. Emergency priority. Only Fleet Command used that channel. He stepped away from the senators speaking to him and moved toward the balcony overlooking the city. Thousands of towers stretched into the night sky like silver needles. Traffic streamed between them in glowing lines while storms rolled far out over the ocean beyond the city walls. The Empire looked eternal from up here. Untouchable. His communicator vibrated again. Elias answered immediately. Commander Vane speaking. The voice on the other side was breathing too fast. That alone made Elias straighten slightly. Lieutenant Marisol had served in deep space monitoring for almost 9 years. Calm under pressure. Efficient. Unshakable. He had never heard fear in her voice before. Sir, she said carefully. We lost contact with listening station Orion. The city noise suddenly seemed very far away. Elias stared into the distance. Repeat that. No response from the station for the last 17 minutes. Their final transmission included partial sensor data and a priority red warning marker. Pirates. No, sir. Rebels. No known signatures. A pause. Then quietly, we don't know what it is. That sentence settled heavily in Elias's chest. The Empire always knew what it was facing. That was the advantage of ruling 13,000 systems for over 5,000 years. Every hostile species had been catalogued. Every border mapped. Every threat measured and studied and reduced to military procedure. Unknown things were not supposed to exist anymore. Send me the transmission, Elias ordered. It's already uploading to your private channel. The file arrived instantly. Corrupted. Incomplete. Shaking camera footage filled his screen. At first Elias thought he was looking at debris floating through darkness. Then the object moved, and his blood went cold. It was a ship, not merely large. Massive. The sensor markers struggled to estimate its dimensions before finally displaying warning symbols instead of numbers. The vessel drifted slowly across the screen like a moving fortress buried beneath centuries of war. Its hull was dark gray, nearly black in places. Scarred. Burned. Ancient. Not sleek like Imperial vessels. Not elegant. Every Imperial ship was designed with smooth curves and polished armor meant to symbolize order and superiority. This thing looked brutal. Functional. Built by people who cared more about surviving than appearances. The outer hull was covered in overlapping repair sections. Entire plates of armor had been replaced multiple times across different centuries. Some areas looked newer than others. Some looked barely held together. Yet somehow that made it more frightening. The ship looked wounded, and still unstoppable. A burst of static crackled across the recording. Then a final piece of audio emerged from the damaged transmission. Voices. Panic inside listening station Orion. They're still moving. Power levels rising. Wait. No. That's not weapons. Another voice interrupted sharply. Sir. They're transmitting something. Static exploded across the recording. Then silence. The footage ended. No explosion. No distress beacon. Nothing. Listening station Orion had simply vanished. Elias replayed the final seconds 3 times. They were transmitting, he whispered. Lieutenant Mara answered quietly through the communicator. Yes, sir. Have we decoded it? No. What about the station crew? Another pause. 211 personnel missing. Elias closed the recording. Far below the balcony, the capital city still glittered with celebration lights. People laughed. Music played. Millions continued their lives completely unaware that something impossible had just crossed the edge of Imperial space. And for the first time in decades, High Commander Elias Vane felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Uncertainty. He turned toward the palace doors. "Prepare fleet command," he said. "Yes, sir." "And Lieutenant." "Yes." Elias looked once more at the image frozen on his screen. The scarred ship. The impossible ship. Still moving inward through Imperial territory. "Tell nobody outside command about this until we understand what we're dealing with." Lieutenant Mara hesitated, then answered honestly, "Yes, sir." That might already be too late. Fleet command descended nearly 2 kilometers beneath the Imperial Palace. The deeper levels of Ethros were older than the Empire itself. Ancient stone corridors reinforced with modern alloy stretched beneath the capital like the bones of something buried long ago. The air was cold, quiet. Every sound echoed slightly. High Commander Elias Vane walked quickly through the command corridors while officers moved aside the moment they saw him coming. Nobody spoke. That was unusual. Fleet command was never silent. Normally the halls buzzed with conversation, strategy debates, and endless military reports flowing between sectors. Tonight the silence carried a different feeling. People were afraid to say the wrong thing aloud. The central command chamber opened before him. Massive holographic displays filled the circular room from floor to ceiling. Star maps rotated slowly in blue light while tactical projections flickered across transparent screens suspended in the air. At the center of the chamber floated the image of the unknown vessel. Enlarged, enhanced, and somehow even worse. Elias stopped walking. For several seconds he simply stared at it. The ship rotated slowly above the command floor while analysts fed recovered sensor data into the projection systems. Every new angle revealed fresh damage, fresh scars. The vessel looked less like a spacecraft and more like a battlefield that had learned how to move. Deep impact grooves stretched across the outer hull. Entire weapon batteries had been rebuilt using mismatched materials. One side of the ship appeared to have suffered catastrophic structural collapse at some point in the distant past before being reconstructed layer by layer over many years. Nothing about it matched modern design philosophy. Imperial ships were symmetrical. This ship adapted, like something evolving through survival. An analyst stepped forward nervously. Estimated length, 28 kilometers. The room remained silent. Elias looked at him slowly. "That estimate can't be correct." "We checked it 4 times, sir." 28 kilometers. The Empire's largest dreadnought class measured just under 11. The analyst swallowed hard before continuing. "The vessel is also accelerating beyond expected mass limitations." Another display appeared beside the hologram. Velocity calculations. Several officers immediately began whispering to each other. "That's impossible. No reactor system should sustain that mass. It would tear itself apart." Elias kept staring at the ship, but it clearly had not torn itself apart. If anything, the vessel looked like it had survived far worse. "Show me the transmission data," Elias ordered. Another screen activated. Wave patterns spread across the chamber. Audio frequencies, repeating endlessly. The unknown vessel had indeed been transmitting before listening station Orion disappeared. Not targeting weapons. Not jamming systems. Broadcasting. Again and again. The same signal repeating on a perfect cycle. A communications officer looked exhausted as she approached. "We still can't translate the language, sir. But we confirmed the transmission structure is artificial." "Meaning, it's intentional communication." Elias narrowed his eyes slightly. "So the first thing this ship did upon entering our territory was attempt contact?" "Yes, sir." "Then why did Orion disappear?" Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Another analyst activated a different display. "Sir, there's more." A new image appeared beside the ship. Metal fragments. Burned debris. Ancient wreckage. These images were recovered from a long-range exploration probe nearly 300 years ago. Elias looked closer. The fragments contained markings, symbols carved deeply into damaged metal. And those symbols matched the writing visible on the unknown vessel. The room grew colder somehow. "Where were these fragments found?" Elias asked. The analyst hesitated before answering. In a satellite galaxy beyond our mapped frontier, several officers immediately exchanged uneasy looks. A separate galaxy. Not another star system. Not another empire. Another galaxy. Elias slowly looked back toward the giant scarred vessel rotating above the command floor. Something crossed his mind then. Not fear exactly. Something heavier. Perspective. For thousands of years, the Empire had considered itself the center of civilization, the dominant power of the known universe. But this ship looked like it came from a place where the Empire would not survive a single day. A xenolinguistics officer hurried into the chamber carrying a data tablet. "We've managed partial translation alignment, sir." Everyone turned toward her instantly. She activated the screen with shaking hands. 3 translated symbols appeared. UNSC. Nobody recognized the phrase. "Is it a species name?" Elias asked. "We don't know." "A military designation?" "Possibly." "Government?" "Maybe." The officer looked genuinely uncomfortable. "That's the problem, sir. The language structure suggests extreme complexity. We only have fragments." Elias folded his arms. "What about the transmission itself?" The officer took a breath. "We translated one repeated section with approximately 32% confidence." The room went completely silent. "What did it say?" The officer looked around once before answering. "Please respond." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The giant vessel continued rotating slowly above them. Scarred. Ancient. Impossible. And somewhere inside that massive war-torn structure, someone had crossed intergalactic space, entered Imperial territory, lost contact with all known civilization, and instead of attacking, they had asked for someone to answer them. Elias stared at the words on the screen for a very long time, then quietly asked the question nobody in the chamber wanted to hear. "What happens?" he said carefully. "If we are already too late?" The Emergency Military Council assembled before dawn. Dozens of high-ranking admirals, intelligence officials, and defense ministers filled the upper command chamber beneath the Imperial Palace. Holographic star maps hovered above the circular table while tactical projections updated continuously around them. At the center of everything floated the image of the unknown ship. 28 kilometers of scarred metal. Silent. Waiting. High Commander Elias Vane stood near the front of the chamber with his hands folded behind his back while the arguments began around him. They crossed into sovereign territory. We still don't know their weapons capability. They erased an entire listening station without debris. Orion may still exist, another officer argued quickly. Communication failure does not confirm destruction. A fleet admiral snorted. A station vanishes after contact with an unidentified warship, and you think it's a technical malfunction? The room descended into overlapping voices. Fear disguised itself differently in military people. Some became aggressive. Others dismissive. A few talked too loudly because silence felt dangerous. Elias listened without interrupting. He had spent 40 years commanding fleets across Imperial territory, and he recognized the atmosphere immediately. Nobody understood what they were facing. That was the real problem, not the ship itself. Uncertainty. One of the older admirals pointed toward the holographic vessel floating above them. "It's damaged," he said confidently. "Look at the hull condition. Structural fatigue everywhere. Multiple repair layers. That thing has barely survived whatever brought it here." Several officers nodded. The logic sounded comforting. If it was truly unstoppable, another admiral added, "it wouldn't look like that." Elias finally spoke. "Or perhaps," he said quietly, "that's exactly why it survived." The room fell silent briefly. The admiral frowned slightly. "With respect, Commander, survival does not make it invincible." "No," Elias agreed, "but it makes it experienced." Another tactical officer activated fresh sensor projections. "We estimate the vessel entered the Veil corridor approximately 11 days ago. Since then, it has maintained a direct inward trajectory toward populated systems." "Intentional course?" "Possibly." Toward military targets? No. That answer shifted the room slightly. The tactical officer enlarged the route projection. The ship is not moving toward fleet installations. It's not targeting shipyards or border fortresses either. Its current trajectory intersects civilian trade systems. A defense minister immediately leaned forward. That makes it worse. Not necessarily, Elias replied. The minister looked irritated. You saw what happened to Orion. Yes, Elias said calmly. I also saw the repeated communication broadcasts. Several officers exchanged frustrated looks. One admiral finally said what many of them were clearly thinking. With respect, sir, peaceful ships do not erase military stations. And military stations do not disappear without firing distress weapons either, Elias answered. Silence again. Nobody liked that point. The truth was uncomfortable. Nothing about the encounter made sense, which meant everyone in the room was trying to force the situation into familiar categories. Invader, pirate, scout vessel, ancient weapon, anything understandable, anything easier than admitting they had no idea what this thing actually was. The chamber doors opened suddenly. Fleet Admiral Marcus Vale entered without ceremony. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Vale commanded the Imperial 7th Armada, the most successful combat fleet in the Empire. Tall, broad-shouldered, and completely lacking patience for political hesitation, he carried himself with the calm certainty of a man who had never truly lost a war. He approached the central display slowly, studied the unknown vessel, then looked at Elias. So this is the monster everyone's afraid of. Nobody answered. Vale folded his arms. It's one ship. A 28-kilometer ship, someone muttered. Still one ship. He pointed toward the holographic projection. Look at the condition of it. Armor degradation, structural repairs, reactor instability near the aft sections. Whatever this thing survived before arriving here nearly killed it. Elias watched him carefully. And if you're wrong? Vale shrugged once. Then we learn quickly. Several admirals nodded immediately. Military cultures loved confidence, especially when fear was spreading. Vale walked slowly around the tactical table. The Empire controls 13,000 systems, he said. We command the largest fleet structure in recorded history. We have ended civilizations larger than this mystery vessel. He stopped beside the hologram. One unidentified ship enters our territory, and suddenly everyone forgets who we are? That line hit the room exactly the way he intended. Pride returned almost instantly. Not completely, but enough. Enough for officers to start breathing normally again. Enough for fear to become anger. Elias recognized the shift immediately. Dangerous. Very dangerous. Because frightened people sometimes hesitated. But proud people made mistakes confidently. Vale turned toward command. I recommend immediate interception. How many ships? A minister asked. 40 should be sufficient. A few officers looked uncertain. 40 warships was not a patrol force. It was annihilation-level firepower. Vale continued calmly. We surround the target before it reaches populated territory. Demand surrender if possible. Destroy it if necessary. And if it resists? Vale looked back toward the giant scarred vessel. Then we teach it the same lesson we've taught every hostile power for the last 5,000 years. The room approved almost immediately. Not unanimously, but overwhelmingly. Because the alternative was admitting uncertainty. And empires hated uncertainty more than war. Elias remained silent as the votes finalized. 40 warships, heavy cruisers, destroyers, support carriers. Enough firepower to crush planetary rebellions. Enough to erase civilizations. The decision spread across Fleet Command within minutes. Battle Group Titan would intercept the unknown vessel inside the Vale corridor before it reached Imperial space. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Officers departed quickly, already issuing deployment orders through their communicators. Only Elias remained near the holographic display. The chamber slowly emptied around him. He stared up at the ancient vessel rotating silently above the command floor. Scarred armor. Endless repairs. Damage layered over older damage. A ship that looked like it had crossed hell repeatedly and kept moving anyway. Then his eyes shifted toward the translated transmission still glowing faintly beside it. Please respond. Elias stood there for a long time, and for reasons he could not fully explain. He suddenly wished very badly that the Empire had answered differently. Battle Group Titan departed Ethros 12 hours later. 40 Imperial warships crossed the outer defense perimeter in flawless formation, their engines burning like blue stars against the darkness. Heavy cruisers formed the central line while destroyers spread outward into intercept positions designed to eliminate every possible escape route. Fleet Admiral Marcus Vale stood on the bridge of his flagship, Iron Dominion, watching the fleet stabilize into combat formation. Calm, confident, professional. Around him, bridge officers moved with the precision expected from the Empire's finest military crews. Tactical data flowed continuously across the command displays while navigators updated interception calculations every few seconds. The unknown vessel remained on course, still moving inward, still transmitting. Vale listened to the repeating signal through the bridge speakers for nearly 30 seconds. The language sounded rough, uneven, nothing like the elegant tonal structures used by most known civilizations. It sounded tired. That irritated him for reasons he couldn't explain. Translation progress? He asked. A communications officer looked up from her station. Improved slightly, Admiral. Approximately 46% comprehension now. Play it. Static crackled softly across the bridge. Then the alien transmission emerged. Broken, distorted, but understandable enough. Peaceful communication. Static. No hostile intent. Another burst of interference. Please respond. Silence filled the bridge. One of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably. Vale kept his expression neutral. Again, he ordered. The message replayed. Same words. Same calm tone. No threats. No demands. Just repetition. The communications officer cleared her throat carefully. Admiral. They've been broadcasting continuously for nearly 11 days. Vale said nothing. Another officer finally spoke. It could be deception. Yes. Vale agreed immediately. But the answer came too quickly. Even he noticed it. The tactical officer enlarged the sensor image of the unknown vessel. No weapon charging detected. Shields. Minimal. The bridge became quieter. That makes no sense, someone muttered. A vessel large enough to survive deep space combat should have been radiating power signatures across half the sector. Instead, the alien ship drifted through the Vale corridor with energy output barely above civilian transport levels. Like it genuinely wasn't preparing for war. Vale folded his hands behind his back. Distance to target? 3 hours. Maintain combat readiness. Yes, Admiral. The bridge officers returned to work, but the atmosphere had changed slightly. The message was affecting them. That was dangerous, because soldiers preferred enemies that behaved like enemies. It made killing easier. Vale walked toward the observation window overlooking the fleet outside. 40 warships moved through formation beneath the stars. An overwhelming force. Any known civilization would surrender immediately at the sight of it. And still the unknown ship kept transmitting. No hostile intent. Please respond. A memory surfaced unexpectedly in Vale's mind. 30 years earlier. His first war. He had been young then. Angry. Certain of everything. A rebel colony on the edge of Imperial space had refused surrender demands. Fleet Command authorized orbital bombardment after negotiations collapsed. Vale remembered standing on another bridge, listening to civilian emergency frequencies during the attack. Not threats. Not military strategy. Families asking for evacuation corridors. Medical stations requesting ceasefire windows. Children crying somewhere through the static. He remembered how quickly those voices disappeared once the bombardment started. Vale pushed the memory away immediately. Irrelevant. This was different. Had to be different. The communications officer suddenly looked up sharply. Admiral. What? The alien vessel is changing transmission structure. The bridge focused instantly. New signals appeared across the tactical displays. Longer broadcasts. More complex patterns. The translation systems struggled briefly before producing fragmented results. Understand. Approaching military vessels. We will not fire. Attempting communication. The bridge fell completely silent. Even the background movement of officers seemed to stop. The alien ship knew they were coming, and it still wasn't preparing weapons. Vale stared at the translation. One officer finally whispered what nobody wanted to say aloud. Why aren't they afraid? No one answered, because suddenly that question felt much more important than the size of the ship itself. A vessel alone in hostile territory should have reacted differently. Defensive maneuvers, shield escalation, weapon targeting, anything. Instead it continued drifting steadily forward while calmly asking to talk. Vale's instincts began pulling in two directions at once. His military training said, neutralize the unknown threat before it becomes uncontrollable. But something older, something deeper, warned him that the situation was slipping toward disaster. Not because the alien vessel was preparing aggression, because the Empire was. Admiral, the tactical officer said carefully, should we respond to the transmission? Every officer on the bridge looked toward him. Vale remained silent for several seconds, long enough for discomfort to spread across the room. Then finally, no. The word landed heavily. The communications officer hesitated. Sir, our orders are unchanged. Yes, Admiral. The transmission continued playing softly across the bridge speakers. We will not fire. Please respond. Vale walked back toward the center command display and stared at the tactical projections. 40 warships surrounding one damaged vessel. The outcome should have been obvious. So why did he suddenly feel like they were the ones making a mistake? Hours passed. The fleet moved deeper into the Vale corridor. Closer, closer. Then finally, target visual range achieved. The sensor officer announced quietly. The main display activated. And for the first time, Battle Group Titans saw the unknown vessel with their own eyes. Several officers forgot to breathe. The ship was enormous. Not elegant. Not advanced-looking. Just ancient and terrifying. The hull carried centuries of scars across its surface. Massive repair sections overlapped older repairs beneath them. Entire weapon batteries looked rebuilt from salvaged components. Burn marks covered enormous sections of armor plating. This was not a proud flagship. This was a survivor. And somehow, that made it worse. The alien vessel slowly rotated, revealing more damaged sections along its side. Then the communication speakers activated again. A new translation finally processed fully enough to understand. The voice that emerged sounded rough and exhausted. We see your fleet. Static. We are not hostile. Another burst of interference. We ask permission to speak. Silence covered the bridge of the Iron Dominion. Vale stared at the image on the screen. 40 Imperial warships surrounded the lone vessel from every direction. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked. Annihilation waiting only for his command. And the unknown ship still wasn't aiming weapons back. It was asking permission to talk. Vale's jaw tightened slightly. Then he gave the order that would change everything. All ships, he said coldly. Prepare firing solutions. The bridge became motionless. Even now, even after the message, the Empire had chosen fear over understanding. And somewhere aboard the scarred alien vessel, someone was still waiting for an answer that would never come. The first shot came from the Imperial destroyer Valiant Spear. Later, survivors would argue for years about whether Fleet Admiral Marcus Vale officially gave the order or whether one nervous weapons officer fired early after misreading a targeting signal. In the end, it didn't matter. History would remember only one truth. The Empire fired first. A streak of white plasma crossed the darkness and slammed into the side of the unknown vessel hard enough to light the Vale corridor like a newborn star. The impact shook space itself. Several Imperial officers instinctively smiled. Nothing survived direct plasma impact on that scale. Then the smoke cleared, and the alien ship kept moving. No evasive action. No return fire. Just movement. Steady. Unchanged. The bridge of the Iron Dominion fell silent. Damage report? Veil snapped. The tactical officer stared at the readings. Minimal. What? Localized armor loss only. Several officers turned sharply toward the displays. The plasma strike had carved molten trenches across the outer hull, but beneath the burning armor layers sat another layer. And beneath that, another. The vessel carried armor thickness beyond anything the Empire had ever constructed. Then all 40 Imperial ships opened fire together. The darkness vanished beneath weapons light. Heavy plasma lances, mass driver cannons, particle beams, missile swarms. The combined firepower of Battle Group Titan struck the alien vessel with enough force to erase cities from planetary surfaces. The ship disappeared completely behind expanding waves of energy. Bridge crews across the fleet waited for debris. Explosion. Reactor collapse. Something. Instead, the sensor officer whispered, "It's still there." The burning cloud slowly separated, and the vessel emerged from the fire. Damaged now. Definitely damaged. Sections of armor glowed bright orange from heat stress. Entire outer plates had been blown apart. One visible weapon structure hung twisted and ruined along the port side. But the ship itself continued forward. Slow. Steady. Alive. Every officer on the Iron Dominion stared in disbelief. No vessel could absorb that much punishment. None. Then suddenly, the alien transmission stopped. Every frequency, every signal, gone. The silence that followed lasted exactly 11 seconds. Those 11 seconds would later become some of the most analyzed moments in Imperial military history. Because during those 11 seconds, the unknown vessel made a decision. Not emotional, not panicked, calculated, precise. The first return shot crossed nearly 300,000 kilometers in less than a heartbeat. The Imperial cruiser Sovereign Dawn disappeared instantly. No explosion. No dramatic collapse. One moment it existed. The next it became expanding debris and white-hot metal fragments spinning silently through space. The bridge of the Iron Dominion erupted into alarms. Cruiser lost. Impossible targeting velocity. Tracking energy spike. Another shot. Another cruiser vanished. Then another. The alien vessel rotated slowly, while hidden weapon structures emerged from beneath armored sections across its hull. Not elegant weapon systems. Massive. Industrial. Built for wars the Empire could barely imagine. Return fire. Vale roared. The fleet unleashed another devastating barrage. This time the alien ship maneuvered. And suddenly the impossible became terrifying. The vessel moved far too fast for its size. 28 kilometers of armored metal shifted sideways through space with violent precision while Imperial targeting systems failed to adjust quickly enough. The ship fought like something that had survived for centuries by refusing to die. Not recklessly, professionally. The bridge tactical display updated continuously. Target priorities identified. Heavy cruisers first. Then destroyers. Then carrier support ships. The alien vessel was dismantling the fleet methodically. Not randomly. Not emotionally. Every attack was intentional. Every movement efficient. A warship operated by people who had done this many times before. The destroyer Hammerfall attempted flank positioning. The alien ship rotated slightly. One shot. Gone. The cruiser Radiant Crown activated shield saturation protocols and launched a full missile spread. The alien vessel ignored the missiles completely and fired directly through the cruiser's reactor core. Gone. Not explosions. Executions. Fleet channels filled with overlapping panic. They're inside our targeting cycles. Shield failure. We can't predict their firing solutions. How are they moving that fast? Vale gripped the edge of his command console while alarms screamed across the bridge. This was impossible. 40 Imperial warships should have overwhelmed anything short of a civilization-ending threat. And yet the battle wasn't even close. The alien ship absorbed damage continuously while reducing the Imperial fleet piece by piece with horrifying discipline. No wasted fire. No intimidation tactics. No triumph. Just work. Cold professional work. The tactical officer's voice shook violently. 21 ships lost. Another explosion illuminated the battlefield outside the bridge windows. Vale watched fragments of a destroyer drift past his flagship. "Close formation," he ordered. "They'll cut us apart individually otherwise." The surviving Imperial ships regrouped quickly around the Iron Dominion, concentrating firepower toward the center. For a brief moment it seemed to work. The alien vessel finally slowed under sustained bombardment. Energy spikes rolled across its hull. Armor sections ruptured. One of its visible weapon batteries exploded outward in burning fragments. Officers across the fleet immediately sensed weakness. "Direct all fire on the damaged sections." Thousands of weapons converged together. The Veil corridor became a storm of plasma and shattered light. Then the alien ship fired again. Something invisible crossed space. No visible beam. No projectile trail. Just impact. 3 destroyers split apart simultaneously. Not destroyed. Separated. Like invisible blades had sliced directly through them. The fleet broke formation instantly. Panic spread fully now. Imperial warships attempted evasive maneuvers in every direction while command channels collapsed beneath desperate overlapping orders. The alien vessel kept moving through the chaos with terrifying calm. One ship, surrounded by 40 enemies, and somehow controlling the entire battlefield. Vale realized the truth then. They had misunderstood the scars on the hull. Those weren't evidence of weakness. They were proof the ship had survived wars far worse than this one. The Iron Dominion shook violently as a direct hit tore through its outer defense shields. Bridge lights failed briefly. Crew members screamed somewhere behind him. Tactical collapse on decks 7 through 11. Engine failure. "We've lost forward batteries." Vale stared at the tactical display. 34 ships gone. The battle had lasted less than 16 minutes. Then suddenly, the alien vessel stopped firing. Immediately, every weapon ceased. Just like that. No pursuit. No finishing strikes. The surviving Imperial ships drifted through burning debris fields, while emergency alarms echoed across shattered bridges. The alien vessel slowly resumed its original course, as though the battle had merely interrupted it briefly. And then the transmission returned. The same message. The same exhausted voice. "We did not want this." Static crackled softly across the battlefield. "Please stop firing." Fleet Admiral Marcus Vale stood motionless on the damaged bridge of the Iron Dominion while debris from his fleet floated around them like ashes. For the first time in his entire military career, he did not know what to do. Then the alien ship locked weapons onto his flagship. The bridge froze. Everyone waited. One shot would end them, but the shot never came. Instead, the vessel turned slightly away and continued deeper into Imperial space, leaving the survivors alive behind it. The Battle of the Veil Corridor officially ended 19 minutes and 42 seconds after the Empire fired the first shot. 40 Imperial warships entered the battle. Only one distress beacon remained active afterward. And somewhere inside the scarred alien vessel, someone restarted the peaceful transmission again. Sensor Officer Lyra Venn floated alone in the dark. Her escape pod rotated slowly through the wreckage of Battle Group Titan, while fragments of burning warships drifted silently around her like dead stars. She was 23 years old, too young to die this far from home. The emergency pod was barely larger than a storage closet. Cold metal walls pressed tightly around her while dim red survival lights flickered overhead. Oxygen reserves blinked steadily across the tiny console. 61 hours remaining. Lyra tried not to look through the viewing port again. She failed. The debris field stretched endlessly outside. Broken cruisers. Destroyed destroyers. Fragments of ships she recognized. Ships she had eaten meals aboard only hours earlier. Now they drifted in pieces through silent darkness. She swallowed hard and forced herself to breathe slowly. Training. Focus on procedure. Panic wastes oxygen. Her hands shook anyway. The battle replayed endlessly in her mind. The impossible speed. The precise targeting. The terrifying calmness of the alien vessel. Most battles became chaos once fear took over. This one hadn't. That was what frightened her most. The alien ship never lost control for even a second. Not once. It fought like experienced soldiers completing a terrible task they had performed many times before. Professional. Efficient. Emotionally distant. Lyra activated her damaged recording system again. The sensor logs still worked. Mostly. Every second of the battle had been captured from her station aboard the cruiser Silver Resolve before the ship died around her. If she survived, Fleet Command needed this data. If she didn't, then someone else needed to find it. Because the Empire still didn't understand what it had encountered. Outside the viewing port, movement caught her attention. The alien vessel. Even now it dwarfed everything around it. 28 kilometers of scarred armor drifting carefully through the remains of the fleet it had destroyed. The ship moved slower now, almost cautiously, as if searching for something among the wreckage. Lyra pressed herself closer to the glass despite the fear crawling through her chest. The vessel looked even older up close. Damage covered nearly every visible section of the hull. Entire armor plates carried scars deeper than shuttlecraft. Some repairs appeared ancient beyond comprehension, layered beneath newer repairs added later. This ship had crossed hell repeatedly, and survived every time. A massive opening suddenly appeared along the side of the vessel. Lyra froze instantly. Not a weapon port. Something else. Then her emergency communicator activated by itself. Static burst loudly through the pod. Lyra jerked backward in panic. A signal was overriding her emergency systems directly. The alien ship had found her. For several terrifying seconds, nothing happened except static. Then a voice emerged. Unknown language. Low, rough, clearly recorded. The message repeated several times in the same pattern. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Just careful. Lyra stared at the communicator with wide eyes while translation systems struggled uselessly against the alien speech. Then suddenly the signal changed. A screen flickered alive, and a face appeared. Lyra nearly dropped the communicator. The being on the screen looked nothing like any species in Imperial records. Forward-facing eyes. Flat facial structure. Pale brown skin lined with age and exhaustion. Gray hair cut short across the top of the head. The alien stared directly into the camera. Not proudly. Not angrily. Tired. That was the first thought that entered Lyra's mind. The creature looked unbelievably tired. Not physically weak. Not defeated. Just exhausted in a way she had never seen before. Like someone who had spent too long surviving things no living being should survive. The alien spoke again in its own language. Then the transmission shifted. Translation software attempted to rebuild meaning from captured Imperial communications. Broken words emerged slowly through heavy distortion. We. Static. Speak. Another burst of interference. No more fight. Lyra stared motionlessly at the screen. The alien's expression remained careful, almost nervous, as if it understood exactly how dangerous this moment was. The translation continued. We are far from home. Static swallowed several words. Lost. The alien paused, and somehow that silence felt more emotional than the words themselves. Then finally, we want talk. Lyra's throat tightened unexpectedly. The being looked away briefly before speaking again. One final translated sentence emerged through the damaged software. Please. The transmission ended. The screen went black. Silence filled the escape pod again. Lyra sat completely motionless. Outside, the giant alien vessel continued drifting through the wreckage of 40 destroyed Imperial warships. But now everything felt different. Because monsters were not supposed to sound like that. She replayed the message immediately. Again. And again. Each time she noticed new details. The alien never threatened her. Never demanded surrender. Never celebrated victory. In fact, the creature looked deeply unhappy about the battle itself. That realization disturbed her more than the destruction. Because if the Empire had truly attacked peaceful travelers first, then what exactly had Battle Group Titan died for? Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Then professional instinct returned. She activated full transmission mode on the emergency beacon. Every sensor log, every combat recording, every second of the alien communication, everything uploaded into compressed emergency packets aimed back toward Imperial space. Her voice shook slightly as she recorded the final report. This is Sensor Officer Lyra Venn, Emergency Pod Designation SV-112. She swallowed hard. The unknown vessel attempted peaceful communication repeatedly before engagement. Her breathing became uneven. The battle group opened fire first. Outside the pod, the alien vessel slowly turned. Massive engines glowed faintly beneath the scarred armor while debris drifted around it like a graveyard. Lyra continued speaking. The occupants claim they are lost and attempting to return home. She hesitated, then added quietly, I do not believe they wanted this battle. Silence. Then one final sentence escaped her before she could stop it. I think they were trying very hard not to kill us. She transmitted the report. The emergency beacon launched the data toward Imperial space. Hours remained before anyone would receive it. Hours before the Empire learned the truth. And somewhere aboard the massive scarred vessel drifting through darkness, the tired alien who had said please was still moving farther away from home. Inside the UNSC Wanderer's resolve, nobody celebrated the victory. No cheering echoed through the ship. No triumphant speeches. No laughter. Only exhaustion. Captain Elena Ward stood silently on the bridge while damage reports scrolled across the tactical displays around her. The bridge lighting remained dim to conserve power. Half the overhead panels had been repaired so many times that different sections glowed in mismatched colors. Emergency wiring ran openly across parts of the ceiling where permanent repairs had become impossible months ago. The ship looked exactly like its captain felt. Tired. Very tired. Reactor 3 stabilized, reported the engineering officer quietly. Hull breach sections sealed. We lost 2 exterior rail batteries completely. Elena nodded once. Casualties? 3 injured. None critical. The bridge relaxed slightly at that. After everything they had survived during the last 2 years, losing no one in a battle against 40 alien warships felt almost miraculous. Elena walked slowly toward the observation window overlooking space outside. Fragments of Imperial ships drifted silently across the darkness. She stared at them for a long time. Not proudly. Not emotionally. Just quietly. Her first officer, Commander Malik Reyes, approached beside her. They fired first, he said carefully. I know. You gave them every chance. I know. She closed her eyes briefly. But they're still dead. Malik didn't answer. Because there was nothing useful to say. The crew of the Wanderer's Resolve had not wanted another war. They had seen enough war already. Far too much. 22 months earlier, the ship had been part of a deep-range exploration mission near the Perseus Rift back home in the Milky Way. A spatial anomaly appeared without warning during routine slipspace transit. By the time the crew regained control, their galaxy was gone. At first, nobody understood how far they had traveled. Then, the navigational systems finished recalculating. 2.3 million light-years from Earth. Another galaxy entirely. The realization nearly broke the crew psychologically. Families, homes, entire human civilization, gone in an instant. And since then, the Wanderer's Resolve had spent nearly 2 years surviving alone in hostile unknown space, searching desperately for a way home. Fuel shortages, hull failures, unmapped gravitational storms, hostile species, ancient automated defense systems, pirates, starvation scares. Half the scars covering the ship came from battles. The other half came simply from survival itself. Every damaged section of the hull carried a memory. Every repair patch represented another disaster they had somehow endured. And now, another war. Elena rubbed tired eyes before turning back toward the bridge crew. Did the escape pod respond? Communications Officer Hannah Chun looked up from her station. No verbal response. But the occupant received our message. Good. Hannah hesitated slightly. Captain, are we sure sending that transmission was wise? Elena looked at her calmly. What alternative did we have? No one answered. Because there wasn't one. The Empire already viewed them as monsters. Silence would only make that worse. Elena moved back toward the center command display where the star maps glowed softly above the tactical table. Navigator Theo Mercer sat nearby, surrounded by endless calculations scrolling across multiple screens simultaneously. Theo looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Unshaven. Exhausted beyond reason. For 22 months he had searched obsessively for a way home. And for 22 months he had failed. Anything? Elena asked quietly. Theo gave a weak smile without looking up. You ask me that every day. And every day I disappoint you. You haven't disappointed anyone. Theo finally looked toward her. You know what I mean. Silence settled briefly across the bridge. The truth hung unspoken between all of them. People were beginning to lose hope. Not openly. Not dramatically. But slowly. Quietly. Like air leaking from a damaged compartment. The crew still functioned. Still followed orders. Still repaired the ship and maintained discipline. But home was starting to feel less real with every passing month. Elena understood that better than anyone. At night she sometimes struggled to remember Earth's sky clearly. That frightened her more than the alien fleets. An alarm interrupted the silence. Long-range sensors updated across the bridge. Commander Malik studied the readings for several seconds. Then looked toward Elena carefully. We've got movement. How many? Malik hesitated. A lot. The tactical display expanded outward. Hundreds of new contacts flooded the sensor grid. Warships. An entire fleet moving directly toward them. Elena stared at the numbers quietly. Estimated count? Still updating. More signatures appeared. And more. And more. Theo looked up from his navigation station slowly. Oh God. The final estimate stabilized. 312 Imperial warships. The bridge became silent. Not panic. Nobody aboard the Wanderer's Resolve panicked anymore. They were too experienced for panic. But the atmosphere changed instantly. Everyone understood the reality immediately. 40 ships had nearly killed them. 300 would finish the job. Malik folded his arms tightly. Well, he muttered softly. Guess they made their decision. Elena kept studying the sensor data. The incoming fleet spread across the tactical map like a steel wall closing around them. An empire terrified enough to send overwhelming force. She understood the logic. Honestly, she might have done the same once. A younger version of herself, at least. Before deep space taught her what survival actually cost. Captain, Hannah asked carefully. Elena remained quiet for several seconds. Then finally, no weapons lock. The bridge looked toward her. Malik frowned slightly. Elena, no aggressive posture. They're bringing 300 warships. I can count. That fleet isn't coming to negotiate. Maybe not. Malik stepped closer. And if they open fire immediately? Elena looked back toward the stars outside the observation window. Then toward the drifting wreckage of the last battle. Thousands of dead alien sailors because fear escalated faster than understanding. No, she said quietly. Not again. Silence. Then she straightened slightly. Prepare full communication broadcast. Hannah blinked. You want to try talking again? Elena nodded. Weapons standby only. No targeting systems. No shield escalation unless fired upon. Theo stared at her. Captain. Against 300 ships? Elena gave a tired smile. We didn't cross 2 galaxies just to become conquerors, Theo. Nobody spoke after that. Because despite everything, despite exhaustion and fear and impossible odds, every person on the bridge knew she was right. Elena moved toward the command console slowly. Outside the ship, stars drifted silently around the scarred hull of humanity's lost vessel. One ship, one exhausted crew, thousands of light years from home. surrounded by another empire's fear, and still trying not to become monsters to survive. The Imperial Senate had not gathered under emergency authority in over 2 centuries. Now every seat in the chamber was occupied. The Senate Hall rose high above the capital city like a monument to power itself. White stone pillars stretched toward the domed ceiling while banners from thousands of conquered systems hung motionless in the cold air. Normally the chamber felt majestic. Today it felt nervous. Whispers spread continuously through the massive room as senators exchanged fragments of classified reports that had somehow already leaked beyond fleet command. 40 warships destroyed. 1 alien vessel. An unknown civilization from another galaxy. The words moved through the chamber like poison. Grand Chancellor Varric stood at the center podium reviewing military projections while dozens of holographic displays floated behind him. Fleet deployments. Weapon readiness. Civilian evacuation routes. Everything smelled faintly of panic hidden beneath procedure. Senator Alina Ceres watched quietly from the upper-tier seats. Unlike most senators, she had actually read the full battlefield reports instead of only the military summaries. That difference mattered, because the summaries described a terrifying alien attack. The full reports described something much more uncomfortable. A tragedy. She looked again at the enlarged image of the unknown vessel hovering above the chamber. The ship looked ancient, not primitive, experienced. There was a difference. Every scar across the hull suggested survival bought through terrible cost. The vessel carried damage patterns from battles unlike anything the Empire had records for. And still it had attempted diplomacy first. That detail haunted her. A senator several rows away slammed his hand against the desk angrily. They destroyed 40 warships. Yes. Another senator snapped back. After we attacked them. The chamber erupted into overlapping arguments immediately. Unknown vessels entering Imperial space deserve military response. They requested communication repeatedly. Could have been deception. Then why stop firing after disabling the fleet? Voices rose higher. Fear made intelligent people stupid remarkably quickly. Alina remained silent while the shouting continued. Because underneath all the political outrage sat one truth nobody wanted to admit. The Empire was afraid. Not merely of the alien ship itself. Of what it represented. For thousands of years, the Empire had believed itself the dominant force in the known universe. Now a single damaged vessel from another galaxy had shattered that illusion in less than 20 minutes. Grand Chancellor Varric finally restored order by forcefully activating the central sound dampeners. The chamber fell silent immediately. The Second Fleet has already deployed, Varric announced coldly. 312 warships currently intercepting the alien vessel near the Veil corridor. Murmurs spread again. Overwhelming force. That sounded comforting. Until people remembered 40 warships had also sounded comforting yesterday. Varric continued. Our duty is clear. The unknown vessel represents an existential threat to Imperial security. Alina finally stood. The chamber quieted slightly. Senator Alina Ceres rarely spoke during military sessions. When she did, people listened carefully. She descended slowly toward the central speaking platform beneath the massive holographic projection of the alien vessel. Then she turned toward the Senate. I have a question, she said calmly. Nobody interrupted. Alina activated another display. The translated communication logs appeared across the chamber walls. Please respond. We are not hostile. We want to talk. Several senators shifted uncomfortably. Alina's voice remained steady. These transmissions began before Battle Group Titan engaged the vessel. No one argued, because that part was confirmed fact. They continued transmitting peaceful intent during fleet interception procedures. Still no argument. Then our fleet opened fire. A senator stood abruptly. They entered our territory armed. Yes, Alina agreed immediately. And we surrounded them with 40 warships before they fired a single shot. The chamber grew quieter. Not convinced, but listening. Alina looked up toward the holographic image of the damaged ship rotating slowly above them. That vessel crossed intergalactic space somehow. Think carefully about what that means. No one answered. Whatever civilization built that ship survived technology beyond our current understanding. Yet, according to every recovered transmission, she paused briefly. They asked for help. The silence deepened, because hearing it spoken aloud changed something emotionally. The aliens weren't threatening conquest. They were asking directions home. A military senator near the lower tiers scoffed loudly. You're trusting the word of unknown beings who annihilated 40 warships. Alina looked directly toward him. No, I'm trusting observable behavior. She activated another combat display. Battle Group Titan's destruction replayed silently above the chamber. The vessel targeted active combat ships only. Another display. The moment the fleet ceased functioning. Another frame. The alien ship stopped firing immediately. The chamber watched quietly. Alina folded her hands behind her back. That is not the behavior of conquerors. No one responded immediately, because she was right, and everyone knew it. That made the situation far more frightening. If the aliens were monsters, destroying them felt easy morally. But if they were exhausted travelers trying desperately to survive, then the Empire had possibly murdered thousands unnecessarily. A younger senator spoke carefully from the upper seats. What if this is only an advance scout? Fear spread instantly through the chamber again. Yes, that was the nightmare beneath every conversation. What if an entire civilization existed behind this ship? A civilization capable of building vessels powerful enough to erase fleets casually? Alina answered softly. Then our first contact with them was opening fire on a ship begging us to communicate peacefully. No one liked that answer, because suddenly the Empire no longer looked strong, just paranoid. Grand Chancellor Varric interrupted sharply. Enough! The holographic displays shifted immediately to military deployment formations around the Veil Corridor. 300 warships surrounding one vessel. A steel cage closing slowly. The second fleet will finish what Titan failed to accomplish. Alina looked toward the projections quietly. And if they fail too? Silence. Varric's jaw tightened. They will not. But the confidence in his voice sounded forced now. Even he heard it. Alina stared at the tactical map. One lonely damaged ship surrounded by overwhelming military power. And somewhere inside that vessel, an exhausted crew still trying to avoid another war. She suddenly wondered something terrifying. What if the aliens weren't actually afraid of the Imperial fleet? What if they were simply tired of killing people who misunderstood them? That possibility chilled her more than any military report. The Senate session continued for hours. Arguments, fear, threat assessments, mobilization plans. But underneath everything, one uncomfortable realization slowly spread through the chamber like a crack forming inside stone. The Empire may have created its own nightmare, and now 300 warships were flying directly toward it. Fleet Admiral Darius Kor commanded the largest military force assembled by the Empire in nearly 300 years. 312 warships surrounded his flagship, Judgment of Ethros, in layered combat formations stretching across millions of kilometers. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, felt tense. Darius stood silently at the center of the bridge while tactical data scrolled across the massive command displays around him. Officers moved carefully through the dim lighting, speaking in quieter voices than usual despite the fleet's enormous strength. Everyone had read the Titan engagement reports. Everyone knew 40 warships had disappeared in under 20 minutes. That knowledge changed people. Distance to target? Darius asked calmly. 2 hours, Admiral. Any change in alien movement? No, sir. The tactical officer hesitated slightly. They're still broadcasting. Of course they were. Darius looked toward the communication displays. The same message repeated endlessly through the darkness. We are not hostile. We want to talk. Please respond. The words had spread throughout the fleet already. Officers pretended not to think about them. Most failed. Darius activated the combat footage from Battle Group Titan again. He had watched it 12 times already. Every engagement angle. Every sensor recording. Every second. Not because he doubted the reports, because something about the battle disturbed him deeply. The alien vessel fought like disciplined soldiers. Not raiders, not conquerors, not fanatics, professionals. There was a terrible difference between those things. The battle replay continued silently above the bridge. Imperial ships firing first. The alien vessel absorbing catastrophic damage. 11 seconds of silence. Then systematic destruction. Darius focused again on the detail that bothered him most. The moment the last Imperial ship became combat ineffective, the alien vessel stopped firing immediately. No pursuit. No executions. No retaliation against escape pods. Nothing. Like a machine shutting off. That was not hatred. Hatred continued after victory. This felt more like necessity. The bridge communications officer suddenly spoke. "Admiral, new transmission incoming." The bridge quieted immediately. A different voice emerged through the speakers this time. Female. Tired. Translated imperfectly into Imperial language. "This is Captain Elena Ward of the UNSC Wanderers. Resolve." The entire bridge became motionless. Actual direct communication. At last. The voice continued calmly. "We are aware your fleet is approaching. No fear. No aggression. Just honesty. We are maintaining weapons on minimum standby only. We are not preparing offensive action." Darius exchanged a brief glance with his tactical officers. Sensor readings confirmed the statement. The alien ship truly had reduced weapon output. Against 300 warships. The transmission continued. "We entered this galaxy accidentally 22 months ago during slipspace transit failure." Several officers frowned immediately at unfamiliar terminology. The voice kept speaking steadily. "We have spent nearly 2 years attempting to locate a route home. We have no territorial claims here. We seek no conflict with your civilization." Silence covered the bridge. Then quietly, "We are tired." That sentence hit the bridge harder than threats would have. Because no conqueror described themselves that way. Captain Elena Ward continued. "My crew contains engineers, navigators, doctors, soldiers, and civilians. Many have families waiting for them. Families who do not know whether we are alive." The voice cracked slightly for the first time. Only slightly, but enough. "We fought your fleet because they fired upon us after repeated communication attempts." A pause. "We do not want to do that again." Darius stared silently at the tactical display showing one damaged vessel surrounded by overwhelming Imperial force. The alien captain spoke once more. "We just want to go home." Then the transmission ended. The bridge remained completely silent afterward. No one moved. No one spoke. Because suddenly the situation no longer felt military. Felt human. Even though they weren't human. Darius slowly exhaled through his nose. What are their current weapon signatures? Weapons still minimal standby only. Any targeting locks? None. No one aboard the bridge understood that. An isolated vessel facing certain destruction should have prepared for battle already. Instead, the aliens continued sitting motionless in open space, broadcasting peaceful intent. Like they genuinely believed communication might still work. Darius walked slowly toward the observation deck. Outside the massive bridge windows, hundreds of Imperial warships glided through darkness in perfect formation. Enough firepower to erase continents. Enough to crush civilizations. And somewhere ahead of them sat one scarred vessel full of exhausted strangers trying desperately not to fight another war. His second-in-command approached carefully. "Admiral." Darius didn't look away from the stars. "If we fire first again." He stopped speaking briefly. "Then history will remember exactly what kind of empire we chose to be." The officer remained silent, because there was no safe answer. An alarm suddenly echoed softly across the bridge. Visual contact achieved. The main display activated instantly. And there it was. The Wanderer's resolve. Even surrounded by 300 warships, the alien vessel somehow looked dignified rather than frightened. Scarred armor stretched endlessly across the damaged hull while repair sections reflected faint starlight unevenly. Entire sections of the ship looked centuries old. Yet it remained operational. Alive. defiant only through survival itself. The vessel did not maneuver, did not raise shields, did not target weapons. It simply waited. Darius felt something unexpected twist quietly in his chest then. Respect. The alien captain had known this fleet was coming. Known the odds. Known another battle might kill every person aboard her ship. And she still chose communication over preemptive attack. That took a kind of courage military officers rarely discussed openly. The bridge tactical officer spoke nervously. All combat systems ready, Admiral. Awaiting authorization. 300 warships waited for his order. One sentence could begin another massacre. Darius stared at the lonely vessel on the screen. Then remembered the final line from the survivor report recovered from Sensor Officer Lyra Ven's escape pod. I think they were trying very hard not to kill us. Slowly, carefully, Fleet Admiral Darius Kor made the most dangerous decision of his career. Open a channel. Several officers looked up sharply. Admiral. All frequencies. Full translation systems. The bridge became still, because everyone understood immediately what this meant. Disobeying direct destruction orders. Risking military tribunal. Possibly treason. Darius kept his eyes fixed on the alien vessel. One conversation, he said quietly. That's all I'm giving them. The communications officer activated the channel. A soft tone echoed across the bridge. Connection established. Darius stood very still for several seconds, then finally spoke. This is Fleet Admiral Darius Kor of the Imperial Dominion. His voice sounded calm, measured, professional, exactly as it should. But inside, he suddenly realized he was speaking not only for the fleet, not only for the Empire, but possibly for the future of two entire civilizations. He looked directly at the damaged alien vessel surrounded by his warships, then said the words no one in the Empire had chosen to say before. I am listening. The bridge of the Wanderer's resolve fell silent the moment the transmission arrived. I am listening. For several seconds nobody moved. After everything that had happened, after the destroyed fleets, after weeks of fear and death and misunderstanding, someone had finally answered them. Captain Elena Ward sat motionless in her command chair staring at the communication display while the translated Imperial voice echoed softly through the bridge speakers. Fleet Admiral Darius Kor. Humanity's first real conversation in another galaxy. Commander Malik Reyes slowly exhaled beside her. Well, he muttered quietly, that's new. A few nervous smiles appeared across the bridge. Small ones, exhausted ones, but real. Elena stood carefully. Her legs ached from too many months sleeping in command uniforms and emergency rotations. Nearly everyone aboard the ship carried the same exhaustion now. The crew of the Wanderer's Resolve had survived impossible distances. But survival always demanded payment. And after 22 months, the cost was showing. She activated the communication channel personally. This is Captain Elena Ward, she said calmly. Her voice traveled across millions of kilometers through the darkness between fleets. Translated imperfectly into Imperial language. Still human. Still honest. Thank you for responding. The silence afterward felt fragile. Like both civilizations understood instinctively that one wrong word might destroy everything. Fleet Admiral Kor answered slowly. You claim your arrival here was accidental. Yes. You expect us to believe a vessel capable of destroying fleets crossed intergalactic space by mistake? Elena almost smiled tiredly. That part surprises us too. A few officers on the Imperial bridge exchanged uncertain looks at the response. No arrogance. No threats. Just honesty again. Elena continued carefully. We were conducting deep-range exploration operations near our home galaxy when we encountered a spatial anomaly during slipspace transit. The translation systems struggled with several terms before approximating meaning. Our drive systems lost containment. By the time we regained navigational control, she paused briefly. Everything familiar was gone. Silence spread across both bridges. The stars themselves suddenly felt larger somehow. Fleet Admiral Kor studied the damaged alien vessel floating at the center of his fleet formation. You have been stranded here for 2 years? 22 months. And during that time? Elena looked toward the scarred walls of her bridge. At first we searched for immediate return vectors. Then fuel became a concern. Then repairs. Then survival. Her eyes drifted toward the observation window where 300 warships surrounded them. And eventually loneliness. Nobody on either bridge spoke after that. Because loneliness was universal. Even between species. Kor folded his hands behind his back. You understand why the Empire views your vessel as a threat. Yes. Then why continue deeper into Imperial territory after the first battle? Because we needed help. That answer surprised many Imperial officers visibly. Elena noticed immediately. You have to understand something, Admiral, she continued quietly. Our ship is old. We've repaired it constantly for nearly 2 years using salvaged materials and damaged fabrication systems. She glanced upward briefly. The Wanderer's resolve looks dangerous because it survived desperate situations. Not because we came looking for war. Fleet Admiral Kor remained silent. So Elena said the thing she suspected truly mattered. We're not explorers anymore. The bridge grew still. We're survivors. Those words landed heavily across every ship listening. Because suddenly the scars covering the vessel made emotional sense. Not an invasion ship. Not a war machine. A lifeboat. A giant armed lifeboat carrying exhausted people across impossible darkness searching desperately for home. Kor finally spoke again. You destroyed 40 Imperial warships. Pain crossed Elena's face briefly. Yes. No excuses. No deflection. Just truth. We did. Another silence. Then quietly, and I would give almost anything for that battle not to have happened. Something shifted across the Imperial Command bridge then. Not politically, emotionally, because conquerors did not sound guilty after victory. Kor looked toward the tactical reports surrounding him. 300 warships. One isolated vessel. The balance of power suddenly felt morally uncomfortable. You could have attacked first when our fleet approached, he observed carefully. Yes. You could attack now. Yes. Yet you haven't. Elena looked directly toward the communication display. Because we are trying very hard not to become the kind of people this galaxy thinks we are. Silence. Long silence. Somewhere aboard the Imperial flagship, an officer quietly muted several weapon targeting systems without being ordered to do so. Nobody commented. Kor stared at the alien vessel for a long time, then finally asked the question that mattered most. What happens if we help you? The bridge of the Wanderer's resolve became perfectly still. Elena answered softly. We leave. No hesitation. No hidden ambition. No demands. We take navigational data. We continue searching for a route toward the Milky Way. And if we find one, her voice weakened slightly for the first time. We go home. The word hung across the communication channel like something sacred. Home. Everyone understood that word. Every species. Every soldier. Every exhausted traveler staring into darkness too far from familiar stars. Elena took a slow breath. Admiral, my crew has spent 22 months waking up every day wondering whether Earth still remembers us. No one interrupted her. Some of them have children. Some left parents behind. Some were supposed to return from deployment years ago. She looked around her bridge quietly. These people followed me across 2 galaxies because survival gave us no choice. Then she looked back toward the communication display. I would like to give them a choice again. Fleet Admiral Darius Kor closed his eyes briefly. Because suddenly this no longer felt like first contact between civilizations. It felt like finding survivors after a disaster too large to imagine. Outside the ships, the stars burned silently across endless darkness. 300 Imperial warships surrounded one scarred human vessel. Weapons ready, histories waiting, and balanced between them sat the future itself. War, or understanding, fear, or mercy. Kor opened his eyes slowly, then gave the order that would change history forever. All fleet weapons, he said calmly. Power down from active combat status. Shock rippled across the Imperial bridge instantly. Admiral, that is an order. Across millions of kilometers, 300 warships slowly disengaged targeting systems one by one. The tactical displays aboard the Wanderer's Resolve changed immediately. Weapons locks disappearing. Threat levels dropping. Human bridge officers stared silently at their screens. Many looked like they didn't quite believe it. Elena herself looked overwhelmed for the first time in months. Fleet Admiral Kor activated the channel again. "This conversation," he said carefully, "is not forgiveness for the dead." Elena nodded slowly. "I know. But perhaps." He glanced toward the stars outside the bridge. "It is how we stop adding to them." Silence followed. Then finally, for the first time since entering another galaxy, Captain Elena Ward smiled. Small, tired, human. "Thank you," she whispered. And somewhere deep inside the scarred old vessel drifting far from home, hope returned quietly to a crew that had almost forgotten what hope felt like.